Story number 1. The Letter That Saved a Life. In 1978, a man named John lived in a quiet corner of Montana, feeling isolated and disconnected from the world. He was struggling with his mental health, finding no purpose in his day-to-day life. One morning, he decided to write a letter, a farewell to life and the world. Just before sending it, something stopped him. He thought of a stranger, someone he'd once met briefly at a local diner, who had shared a small moment of kindness with him years before. This stranger, a woman named Carol, had written her address on the back of a napkin, telling him that if he ever needed someone to talk to, she was there. John sent the letter, not the one he planned for himself, but a letter to Carol instead. To his surprise, Carol replied within days. She offered words of hope. Without knowing the true weight of the letter she'd received, her response wasn't just kind, it was life-saving. That single exchange gave John a reason to hold on. He found the strength to seek help, and his life took a new direction. The two never met again, but Carol's words lived in John's heart forever, reminding him that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change someone's world. Story number 2. The stray dog that brought a family together. In a small town in Ireland, a young couple was going through a rough patch in their marriage. Lisa and Mark had drifted apart, both caught up in their work and personal stresses, barely communicating. They were on the brink of calling it quits when, one rainy evening, a stray dog wandered into their yard. At first, neither wanted to deal with the dog, but something about the animal's hopeful eyes softened Lisa's heart. She brought it inside, and together with Mark, they nursed the dog back to health. Caring for the dog became a project they could both focus on, one that required teamwork and communication, things they hadn't done in months. Over time, the dog's presence brought them back to one another. They started talking, laughing, and spending more time together, slowly rebuilding their relationship. What began as a random encounter with a stray turned into the unexpected glue that mended their broken marriage. The dog, who they named Lucky, stayed with them for the next 10 years, and to this day, they credit him for saving not just their marriage, but their family. Story number 3. The Librarian's Promise. In a bustling New York City library in 1965, an old librarian named Miss Harris made a promise to a young boy named Eddie. Eddie was shy, a bit of a loner, and came to the library every day after school, quietly sitting in the corner, reading science books. Miss Harris noticed his thirst for knowledge. One day she asked him, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" "I want to go to space," he said, eyes lightening up. Miss Harris smiled and told him, "I believe you. I promise if you ever make it to space, I'll be watching from right here." Years went by. Eddie stopped coming to the library, but Miss Harris never forgot him. Decades later, Eddie became an astronaut, part of a mission to the International Space Station. In a televised interview, when asked what inspired him, Eddie spoke about an old librarian who believed in him when no one else did. Miss Harris, now in her 90s, watched the interview from her tiny apartment. Tears filled her eyes as she realized Eddie had fulfilled his dream. the promise she made all those years ago wasn't just to Eddie. It was to herself, a reminder of the power of believing in others.